Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. Let me start with some home thoughts. The Soyuz spacecraft with Expedition 54 crew is seen under parachute as they return from 168 days on board the space station. And that took me to Carl Sagan, the pale blue dot. We succeeded in taking that picture, and if you look at it, you see a dot. That's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever lived out their lives. The aggregate of all our joys and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and in triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the dot on scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner of the dot. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds, our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. To my mind, there is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly and compassionately with one another, and to preserve and cherish that pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. Carl Sagan made that speech at the Cornell University in 1994. And what I found most powerful was the mightiest among us, the most powerful we know, are all but fleeting masters on micro-fractions of a dot. From there I jumped to Don DeLillo's point omega, where the last billionth of a second in the evolution of matter. And then I went back to another article I wrote where I learned that nearly half of the atoms that make up our bodies may have formed beyond the Milky Way and travel the solar system on intergalactic winds, driven by giant exploding stars. In some sense, we are extragalactic visitors or immigrants in what we think of as our galaxy. Rumi said, we come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust. Carl Sagan, we are like butterflies who flutter for a day and think it is forever. And finally, the cosmos is within us. We are made up of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. Political reflections: US companies abandon the NRA as boycott call grows. Delta Airlines and United Continental Holdings, Inc. became the latest companies to cut ties with the National Rifle Association after a call to boycott. The lobbying group became a top trend on Twitter on Friday. The online furore continued into the weekend after the NRA's leaders attacked the media and Democrats, claiming the fallout from last week's Florida high school massacre was being politicized. One user with almost 250,000 followers tagged a slew of brands in his post, including NRA partners Hertz Corporation, and LifeLock Inc. There are only 5 million NRA members, but over 300 million of us. Businesses have a choice whose business they prefer. And I said the NRA has been youthquaked. Youthquake defined as a significant cultural, political, or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people. 2017 word of the year. And I was at that time talking about the snap election in the United Kingdom, and I said the youth vote slept in during Brexit, then woke up for the UK snap election and nearly carried Jeremy Corbyn into 10 Downing Street. Here's an image for Trump tonight: Jeff Sessions with Rod Rosenstein and Solicitor General Noel Francisco. Trump, of course, has been hammering Sessions again on Twitter. In a blow to Trump, top aide Hope Hicks to leave the White House. She's 29 and was leaving a day after she spent 9 hours in a closed hearing of the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee on its investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 US presidential election, about which I've opined severally. China's top paper says reform does not mean lifelong presidency. Reforms to China's constitution to remove term limits for the presidency does not mean lifelong terms, the ruling Communist Party's official People's Daily said on Thursday after a surge of concern that Xi Jinping may stay in power forever. Conclusions of mine: it's difficult to measure the degree of pushback. There has been some, but it's not going to be effective. China, of course, underwent a parabolic rise, which has been simply breathtaking. China senses and acts on US weakness in the South China Sea. China is a rising power, and it is only natural that it would seek to expand its areas of naval operations and political influence. However, arriving late to the geopolitical game, China does not want to play by the rules that have long been established, but which Beijing did not help to formulate. China seems to think that because it was once the center of its world, more respect for its exalted status is needed, and Beijing wants to unilaterally change the rules for international engagement for its own benefit. But that doesn't work, and neither does being a maritime bully. Beginning in 2010, Beijing upped its assertiveness in claiming ownership to much of the South China Sea, eventually putting forward a claim that the waters within a 9-mile dash line map had been Chinese since historical times. The sweeping claim intersects waters and territories claimed by Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. Some readings of the broad map also put China in conflict with Indonesia over the gas-rich Natuna Sea. Beijing has since been building military outposts on reefs and man-made islets in that area, pieces of land that are not recognized as sovereign territory by the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. Some of these manufactured islets have recently been outfitted with landing strips capable of accommodating transport aircraft and jet fighters for even greater projection of power. Interestingly, just as the Quad, Australia, India, Japan, and the US, is girding up to challenge China with freedom of navigation operations, sailings in the South China Sea, China has extended its focus to the Indian Ocean through patrols in waters close to the Maldives. The Maldives are 1,200 small coral islands within a chain of 26 atolls running 520 nautical miles north to south. The only safe east-west passage through the area is at the southern end of the shallow seas nation in the Indian Ocean. Beijing fears being hemmed in by Washington and its allies, and it is through these waters leading to the Straits of Malacca, choke point, that China's energy supplies from the Middle East pass. China clearly worries that the sea lines of communication could be interdicted with the subsequent loss of greatly needed energy, and Beijing fully intends to keep those sea lines of communications open by controlling waters contiguous to seafaring bottlenecks. Since Washington did nothing in response to the 2016 China drone heist despite American statements that it intends to ramp up FONOPs in the South China Sea. China seems to be confidently expanding its naval reach. Besides intending to control the eastern approach to the Straits of Malacca by claiming much of the South China Sea, Beijing is now gearing up to dominate the western approach in the Indian Ocean, to command SLOCs there as well. It thus seems likely that China will force a naval confrontation with the US or one of its allies in the near future. If Beijing does militarily challenge Washington in the South China Sea, how will the US and its emerging Quad alliance react? What if the challenge occurs instead or simultaneously in the Indian Ocean? It will be interesting to understate the escalating situation, to see how China plays on any belief that America's lack of a meaningful response over the 2016 drone incident shows the US is a paper tiger in the region. If Washington backs off or otherwise acquiesces during any naval clash with Beijing, the remaining members of the Quad will likely fold as well. China would then have won nearly all of the Asian waters it needs for controlling vital SLOCs. Is the rest of the world prepared to live with that? August 2017, I spoke about this when I said apart from a few half-hearted and timid FONOPs, China has established control over the South China Sea. It has created artificial islands and then militarized those artificial islands across the South China Sea. It is a mind-boggling geopolitical advance, any which way you care to cut it. I also said the pivot to Asia, which was supposed to contain China, is dead in the water. China has sprung that trap. Dollar index, this is a chart from Holger, 90.72. I felt it was due a recovery, and I think it's got more to go. US Eurozone 2-year yield spread is at 280 basis points, the widest since the Euro's launch in 1999. But the dollar's not getting much traction because dollar hedging costs are soaring. Let's see that from this chart. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 122.04, having dipped below 122. Dollar index 90.72. The Japanese yen 106.79. Swiss franc 0.9452. The British pound has slipped 137.63. The Australian dollar 0.7734. India rupee 65.175. South Korean won 1086.48, Brazilian real 324.60, Egyptian pound 17.6617, South African rand has softened a little bit, 11.8252. This is a chart of sterling from JS Blokland, and he's tweeted under pressure, indeed it is. Euro versus the dollar, we're backing down here, last trading 122.07. Spotify plans to list shares to fend off Apple and Amazon. Spotify, which wants to trade a spot on the New York Stock Exchange, is taking an unusual path to the US public markets with a direct listing that will let investors and employees sell shares without the company raising new capital or hiring a Wall Street bank or broker to underwrite the offering. Spotify, launched in 2008, is available in 60 countries, is the biggest music streaming company in the world, and counts services from Apple, Amazon, and Alphabet as its main rivals. Revenue rose 39% to $4.99 billion in 2017. Operating loss widened to 378 million euros. Spotify compared its aspirations to the reach of Facebook and YouTube. We believe the universality of music gives us the opportunity to reach many over 3.6 billion internet users globally. 71 million premium subscribers globally, twice as many paying customers as music streaming runner-up Apple. And then they've got this idea of an ad-supported service. We believe there is a large opportunity to grow users and gain market share from traditional terrestrial radio. Commodity markets, let's take a look at where gold is, $1,314.50. Crude oil, $61.65. So both a little bit off their highs of the year. Probably got some more backing and filling to do. do. I like this Roku, a premium gin made up using 6 distinctly Japanese botanicals, has entered the UK market. We wanted to make something that was unusual but not strange. Roku, which means 6 in Japanese, is distilled in Osaka. It is made with sakura flower, sakura leaf, yuzu peel, sencha tea, gyokuro tea, and sancho pepper for a spicy finish. And the flavour, dangerously light and smooth, smelling of citrus and a hint of spice. There are 8 traditional botanicals in the mix: juniper berries, coriander, angelica root, angelica seed, cardamom, cinnamon, bitter orange peel, lemon peel. Sounds very tasty. Sub-Saharan Africa, South Sudan minister, you can party in Juba. Oh well, take his word for it then. Congo, the president of the DR Congo visited President Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe. Posted this photograph. South African all shares down 1.98% year to date. Dollar versus rand, as you can see from this chart, the rand has been selling off a little bit, but I believe we're headed back towards 11. Egyptian pound versus the dollar, 17.6617. The International Monetary Fund projects that Nigeria will muddle through with its economic policies in the medium term, according to a report seen by Reuters on Wednesday. Nigerian all shares up 13.3% so far this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 29.36% this year. Let's move on to Kenya, where Barclays Kenya released their full year earnings per share slipped 5.882%. Their holding of government securities increased by 20% to 58.476 billion. Loans and advances to customers were barely changed at 168.39 billion, so they didn't expand the loan book to customers, they expanded the position in government securities. Total assets were 271.17 billion shillings. Customer deposits up 4.376% at 185.97 billion. FX trading income was a standout, up 9.283% to 2.86 billion shillings. Total operating income was down 4.499%. Loan loss provision was at 3.115 billion versus 3.927 billion last time. Staff costs were up 3.95%. Operating expenses was down 13.342%. Other operating expenses, I mean. Profit before tax down 4.528% to 10.36 billion. Profit after tax down 6.393% at 6.92 billion. Earnings per share was down 5.882% at 1 shilling and 28 cents. They're paying a final dividend of 80 cents a share. Add that to the 20 cents interim, and they've distributed 1 over 128. A liquidity ratio 33.4%, capital adequacy ratio 18% versus a regulatory limit of 14.5%. The implementation of the interest rate cap compressed our margins and resulted in a decline in our revenues. Currently, our strategy is to close the income gap by increasing sales volumes in the upper segments, increasing our product penetration in our current client base, and increasing our focus on transactional banking deposits. That's Jeremy Awori. To manage costs, we are making sustainable investments in a number of running initiatives designed to create sustainable efficiencies. These initiatives include the automation of our processing centers, investments in alternate channels, and the implementation of branch rationalization programs. I thought these were resilient results. Trades on a P of less than 9. It was one of my picks for this year at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. On the 2nd of January, I said Standard Chartered and Barclays are my top picks, and I expected a return of in excess of 25%. Barclays is up nearly 14% year to date. Now throw in the dividend. Co-op Kenya is up 12.1875% year to date. Kenya February inflation hits its lowest rate since May of 2013. That's from Kenya Wall Street. The Nation Media Group is down 10.344% so far this year. But according to Kenya Wall Street again, His Highness the Aga Khan is neither travelling to Kenya anytime soon, nor is he willing to sell his stake in the company. Interesting promoted Twitter hashtag IMF conspiracy does not bode well. That's the way the government's thinking. Nairobi all shares up 6.17% year to date. The NSE 20 is up 1.05% year to date. And finally, the last link on the page on rich wrap-ups is for all the listed shares at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Thank you kindly for stopping by.